The automated transfer vehicle that's just arrived at the International Space Station is going to provide a lot of fresh fruit and gifts from home for the crew members, new clothes, personal supplies. But there's also a good bit of science material that is going to boost the station's research capability, and that's been delivered too. This morning, we're going to learn more about the science that's coming out of the ATV with Camille Lane, who is an International Space Station Assistant Program Scientist. Camille, is what's on board the ATV-3? Is this an especially large delivery?
It's not an especially large delivery, but there are quite a few samples, research samples, that will be launched to support some of the investigations that are going on during this increment.
There are a material there for a couple of experiments that have nano in the title, which
Yes.
sounds kind of cool. Tell me
hmm
about what those are.
Well, the first one is called NanoStep, and that's all about protein crystal growth. And what they've launched are protein crystals, specifically called lysozymes, which are large amounts found in egg whites or in our tears or saliva. So they've launched those protein crystals, and what investigators are trying to study the mechanisms for which they grow perfectly under microgravity. And this is a Japanese led investigation. And so, protein crystal growth, sometimes when we have launched them, and we've launched about 400 of these protein crystals, some have grown perfectly, and the perfection of the crystal is reflected in its size and its purity. And so, they've seen some growing perfectly, and some haven't grown at all. So, researchers are trying to fundamentally understand what is the precise mechanism for the growth of the perfection in the protein crystals.
Is the value in getting perfect crystals, or does that teach us something else?
Yes, absolutely. It is critical. Protein crystal growth is critical in the development of protein structures. And that's fundamental to our understanding of life at the molecular level and also the development of molecular biotechnology.
That's nano steps. There's
That's
also,
nanosteps.
I counted 12 different investigations under the name nano racks. What's new in the nano racks section here?
So, NanoRacks is a multi purpose research facility that's on board the space station, and it's commercially developed and it's managed under the auspices of the U.S. National Laboratory. And so, the samples that are going up, it's actually 7 investigations that will be housed in the NanoRacks facility. And these are sometimes investigations that are led by researchers, and sometimes they're student developed experiments. So these 7 are actually student developed experiments. And they involve one, looking at the effects of microgravity on concrete mixing. And the students would be looking at mixing 2 types of concrete mixtures, one by stirring and one by vibrations. And they would compare those mixtures to concrete mixtures underground. The second is looking at the effect of microgravity on an antibiotic resistant E. coli bacteria. And then there's one that's looking at a remote controlled robotics, its mechanisms, and its mechanical devices. So, very interesting student developed experiments on board.
Students of which age?
High school,
High school
and from
students.
California high schools.
My goodness.
Yes.
Now, there's hardware for something else called energy, and that's one that I haven't heard very much about. What's that?
Energy is an ESA led investigation, and what the researchers are looking at is the metabolic rate of the crew members and the total energy balance after long duration space flight. What they found is that crew members come back with a negative energy balance, meaning that their caloric intake is insufficient for the amount of energy that they need to live and work in space. So ultimately, researchers are trying to derive an equation for the amount of energy that's required during long duration spaceflight.
Do they not eat enough, or do they not eat enough of the right things?
They don't eat enough for the amount of energy, and so it's predicting how much work needs to be done and how much calories need to be intaked in order to complete that work. There's so much we're discovering about how the human body adapts to microgravity and long duration space flight, and so researchers are becoming more and more interested in using nutrition as a countermeasure for those adverse effects that we see. And so, one of the effects that we see when there's a negative energy balance is a significant loss in body mass. There's also a loss in mental and physical power, muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and cardiovascular deconditioning. So, it's significant.
There's a there are a lot of different experiments that have to do with finding out how the body's impacted.
Yes.
One is relatively new. It's called Sprint, and you've got some new supplies going up for the Sprint experiment.
Yes, we have some resupply kits going up for the sprint experiment. And I say sprint is all about exercise. And so it involves high intensity, low volume exercise regimen. Currently, astronauts and crew members are required to do about 2.5 hours a day of exercise. So some of the crew members who are going to be involved in this investigation would not exercise as frequently, but when they do exercise, it's going to be with greater intensity. And so the exercise regime includes integrated resistance using a device on board called an ARED, which is an advanced resistance exercise device. And they'll also get their cardiovascular conditioning from the treadmill, the Colbert load-bearing treadmill.
They and they have other exercise equipment on too,
They do.
But the Sprint is different because it's a harder workout.
Exactly, more intense workout. And so, like the nutrition, researchers are hoping that the exercise could be used as a countermeasure for some decreasing some of the losses they see in the muscle and the bone and the cardiovascular deconditioning.
Eduardo Amaldi has some new hardware and supplies for another variation of the Altea experiment,
Yes.
anomalous long-term effects in astronauts. Tell me about what's the new ones here.
It's called Altea Shield, and it's led by the Italian Space Agency, and that's a technology investigation that's going to monitor the cosmic radiation inside the U.S. Destiny Laboratory. Ultimately, researchers are trying to study the interactions between cosmic rays and brain functions. And we know that radiation, space radiation, is one of the greatest risks to astronauts traveling beyond low Earth orbit. So it's important to study what that environment is like. So Altea Shield is another installment in the Altea investigations that's trying to characterize the cosmic radiation environment within the vehicle, and ultimately we'll be able to develop technologies that could protect the astronauts from that kind of space radiation.
Now, I'm really interested in another piece of research that was delivered here that isn't going to survive. It doesn't have anything to do with the space station,
Yes.
really. It's called REBER, and it will support ATV while it goes to its own destruction.
Right. So we're taking advantage of the fact that the ATV is a non-reusable vehicle and will break up supposedly in the Earth's atmosphere. So REBER is a device. It stands for Re-entry Breakup Recorder. And what it does is, as the ATV's orbit is decaying and re-entry starts about 120 kilometers, the host, which we call the ATV, starts breaking up. The REBER is deployed, and it starts recording some of that process, that breakup process. So it records the temperature, it records the acceleration, the rotational rates and positions of some of the debris that comes from the breakup phenomenon. And researchers are ultimately trying to make that re-entry safer, because we know some pieces survive, so being able to predict the trajectory and ultimately make the population safe is the objective.
The REBER doesn't survive, does it?
No, it actually it sends the information back to the ground team. But yes, ultimately it's supposed to self-destruct.
We've often talked about how the research that's done on the station can impact people like you and me, who aren't in space at all. This week's program scientist, Dr. Julie Robinson, your boss,
My boss,
announced a new website to help spread word about what's being done. Fill me in on this new website. It's called Benefits for humanity.
Benefits for Humanity is an extraordinary accomplishment for us. We just launched this website that features stories that are significant in the scientific, technological, and educational accomplishments that have come from research on the space station to date that has an impact on life at Earth. And so I'll give you a little bit of context for the Earth benefits. When we talk about the value of the International Space Station, we talk about it in the following ways. We talk about it in a way, we say a 3 by 3 messaging. So we talk about the engineering achievements, the
Right.
benefits we've gotten from the engineering achievements of building this extraordinary spacecraft. We talk about the international achievement, the fact that we have worked across the globe, 5 space agencies working together to develop, design, assemble the International Space Station. And finally, the research accomplishment, which is now fully being realized. And that's the benefit we get from the knowledge we gain by doing research on the space station. And we've seen 3 benefits in that area. It's scientific discovery, which is the fundamental knowledge that we get from research, things that could rewrite textbooks. And then there are those things that would help us further explore space. And then there are the Earth benefits. And so, in that context, we launched this website to feature the Earth benefits. And we focused on 3 areas: human health, education, and Earth observation and disaster response. And I can give an
Hmm.
example in
Give me one.
one example. Um, there's so
Yeah.
many phenomenal examples, but the first one I'll talk about is NeuroArm. It's in the area of human health. And NeuroArm came from this family of space robots. You know, we had the Canadarm on the
Hmm.
shuttle. Now we have the Canadarm 2 and the Dextra on the space station. And so, what biomedical engineers in Canada and physicians had been trying to work towards was coming up with a technology that would assist in neurosurgery. Right now, when a patient is doing an MRI, um, and there needs to be an operation done in a specific place that's very sensitive, the best human hands can't accomplish that task. And so they came up using the space robotic technology, applied that to developing a robot that now assists in neurosurgery. And dozens of people since 2008 have been treated successfully with this kind of surgery and technology.
That's great. And there, I don't want to spoil a surprise for everybody. We'll let them read about some
Right,
of the other things.
absolutely.
And the website, the Benefits for Humanity
Benefits
website.
humanity.
Great.
www.nasa.gov/ISS-science. You go to research and technology, click benefits, and you'll see the stories.
Okay. And good. We put it up on the screen so people can see it too. Camille, thanks
Fantastic.
very much. We've
Thank you so
enjoyed the
much for
discussion.
having me.
Camille Lane is Assistant Program Scientist at the International Space Station Program.